we put so much into this journey that we're doing and to our mission, our companies and so on, but it's like at the end of the day there's that same application needs to be put into yourself, right? That's why I really feel like, yes, this is an entrepreneurial journey, but it's almost more of a self-discovery journey than it is anything, you know what I mean?
100%.
That's why you see all these entrepreneurs, get up at 5 and ultra marathons and ice baths. It's you're putting into this company. If you can put into that company, you should be putting into you.
Welcome to another episode of Big Risk Energy. And on this episode, I am blessed to be joined by the one and only Andy Albalous. Andy, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, man. Thank you.
All right. What's the quick way that you introduce yourself?
I have a few things, but yeah, I'm 26 years old. I'm an entrepreneur from North London. I think the best way to say is recently I was on a TV show with Gordon Ramsay. I'm a founder of a CBD company, CBD food brand. So, yeah, I mean, however you want to take me is however I'll introduce myself.
Amazing. All right, I love that. And two of my favorite topics, CBD and Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah,
so we're in for a good conversation.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
All right, so talk to me about the TV show in the sense of, was that something that you had aspiration for? Was it something that you came across and you thought that would be a really cool opportunity? Like, how did you come to the idea of going for it?
Yeah. To be honest, everything that we've done as a company, like from launch, was just as it came. There was no like real strategy. I guess if I did this whole thing again, I'd have, much more refined strategy on what I would do. But as for the show, we were reached out to by some casters of the BBC or from the show. And yeah, they just said to us, like, we really like your brand. I was at the International Food Fair or the food event in Excel exhibiting. Yep. And I think one of the casters secretly came and checked us out and stuff. And, I actually recognized his face when I'd done the interview stage and stuff. So it was pretty cool. But yeah, they reached out to us and just like from the get-go, just kind of like shooting from the hip. If there was an opportunity, go for it sort of thing. And they reached out. We had a bit of delegation about who's going to actually do it, whether it was me or my founder or co-founder. And we said, yeah, Andy, you're a bit more arrogant, so go and do it. Yeah, so it was cool.
Amazing. So it was a no-brainer. Once the opportunity was there, we're like, right, this could blow us up exposure-wise. And did it have the outcomes you were expecting?
Yeah, of course. I mean, naturally, I think when you go on something like that, it's real like romantic. The idea of going on TV is probably a bit sexier than it actually is. But yeah, it took us like further than we thought it would have. It wasn't as hockey stick as we expected, but I think, especially with like the field that we're in, the space of CBD, it's just a great cosign and sort of like, especially to win it and have Gordon in the team, it's like that validation is something that I think not just customers, but say anything B2B, like anyone can actually sort of think, okay, cool, they're not snake oil salesmen or something along those lines. But it's being a CBD brand on the BBC is also quite like a touchy space, right? There was a lot of due diligence that had to be done. And I think that in itself, like just to be on the show kind of proves a point. So yeah, I think it's just not just for us, but I think it was just a big win for CBD. I think like we had a lot of other founders of different brands who was like, yeah, this is a great opportunity for all of us. And I think that's one of the best things about it as well. So yeah, man, it was cool.
Yeah, 100%. I can imagine the legitimacy that being involved with the BBC, with Gordon Ramsay, gives to CBD. And especially at a time where it still amazes me how CBD is illegal in so many countries, where actually when we look at it, now nothing's a miracle drug, but when you actually look at the benefits that CBD has in so many different use cases, I mean, how is this thing not only just widely available, but being pushed?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think you said it and I didn't. And I think just part of that issue is the idea of medical claims and so on. So, you're saying about the benefits, I'm not, right? And it's like even one of them things, like how we even market our business is like, goes back down to them same rules. So yeah, just being on there was a great cosign, but we're still quite far behind even say, for example, the States and their approach to cannabis and CBD. So I think, it's an ever-changing industry, but we are seeing changes towards the sort of like good side of it. There are, especially being a food product, you're going to have the FSA and so on, and all of these rules and legislations you have to follow, some advisory, some mandatory. So it's a real tricky space. And I think to be a founder and your first, I guess, like project being CBD and CBD food, and then it's just a weird journey. But I think it's just
a tough one.
Oh my God, why don't I just do something simple? Sometimes I do ask myself that, but it's like, if it was simple, everyone would do it. If it was like super easy, everyone would be involved. So yeah, we're kind of like, you need luck in these things too. I feel like especially anyone who's kind of done anything is, of course there's hard work, there's diligence and so on, and all of that sort of like them coin turns, but you do need an aspect of luck, and it's when it hits, it just hits right. Like, I mean, to have a caster reach out to us, then I think it was around like 5,000 businesses or something in that number applied. 12 of us got on the show.
Wow.
I won it. So it was like, and even though that still didn't like affect my confidence, I really felt like the hardest part to do the show was getting on. So we weren't really supposed to tell anyone, but like, of course, like my family knew that I got on, and we were like screaming when I got on, like, yeah, like, as if I won it already.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you need delusion, you need luck. All of these things kind of like in a melting pot are the sort of traits you need as either a founder or being in a startup, like early stages. So
100%, so much luck. And you made some amazing points in there. I think one, US versus UK, and I think a society which at least I considered to be traditionally a bit more conservative. It's very interesting to see how they are so much more progressive in their thinking around cannabis. Even now, I believe psilocybin legal in Washington DC. So very, very interesting to see that we are quite far behind on that side. But like you said, so much is luck and timing, which means considering how front and center your brand is now, assuming that when the UK does catch up and things become a bit more widely available, then you guys are in such a great place. And it's like with my last company, we're building out tools for esports, and we got lucky that brands just started getting excited by esports 2 years, 3 years after we started building. If it happened earlier, it would have been bad timing, bad luck. So yeah, so much of that is luck.
No, absolutely. I think like you made a great point, adaptogenics as well, when you're looking at psilocybin and anything that's in that space, we're good bit behind the States, and there's pros and cons, right? It's like you said with your esports background, it's you could have launched in the sort of like the biggest sort of golden era of that space, but you could have slacked or missed an opportunity, but at least you kind of had them sort of trials and tribulations in that early stage. And I think especially when it comes to us sort of going international and it's a great time to jump into across the pond and go into somewhere like that. So it's crazy. It's really, like you said, it's just luck of the draw sometimes.
100%. All right. So one of the reasons why I love Gordon Ramsay, obviously amazing chef, but actually incredible businessman, right? Like what that guy has built from like a media empire perspective, it's amazing. Like, you've got almost, for me, you got to respect him even more as a businessman than you do as a chef. So what's it like to work with Gordon?
Do you know, it's funny you say that. You're probably like one of the only people to really pick that up, because it's probably the most overlooked thing about him, is he has such a knack for it. And it's of course, when you build an empire like that, it's second nature. But I remember in the final, we were being grilled on our business, and of course it's a production, so there are things that go on behind. But to be posed with a lot of the questions about CBD, and of course I've been in this space since the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, and the questions he posed me and just the understanding he had of the industry was shocking. And it's not just what he knew about it, it's like, or what he knows, it's also like how he thinks. So the idea of like knowing what to pose and sort of asking us about our positioning, and don't forget there's 12 different businesses on there with, yes, we're all in the F&B industry, I guess, but everyone has a sort of slightly different model, and if it's in the same space, then it's just a different, sort of positioning of a company. And he would give you gems like throughout the 8 weeks. So it was more like sometimes you learnt vicariously through the things he'd done, his attention to detail and so on. But then it was like when it came to something that's really tangible information, how he'd think about it or how he'd address issues. And even, you'd be on set to do a challenge or something, and how even his team worked, how the production team worked, seeing his social media team with him at all times, seeing how, okay guys, let's go, he's reading through something, it's next. As soon as filming's done, he's probably filming 2 things at a time. So it's, again, I don't understand that because I'm not there. So, but you can only sort of take what you can from that situation. As soon as I started that whole journey, my idea was like, I'm just going to soak everything, not just the show, not just the challenges. What can I learn off my contestants that I'm going against? What can I learn off Gordon? What can I learn about the production? I've learned so much in terms of now creating my own content, how I would go about it maybe if I had a team and so on. So just everything in general, it's really crazy. Even like after the show, of course, with these things come paperwork, and I didn't want to skim anything. I wanted to really understand. So say coming round to my first seed investment or something, I wanted to really learn what it was like to fundraise and so on, and all of the logistics that come with it. And understanding that his team are very diligent, stuff like that. And, you know, you don't get to that situation by slacking and having great people around you. You know, yeah, I was going to use a saying that didn't really work, but yeah, it's really a privilege, so it's cool.
Yeah, 100%. No, I can imagine. And what would you say the differences have been pre-show, post-show? You know, what does that look like, and what's the difference being of actually having, you know, so I think there's the exposure that you get from the show, but then also, as you said, actually having Gordon and I suppose part of his team involved with your business. You know, what impact have those both made?
I think from a B2B standpoint, we get a lot more answered emails, which is probably a good part. But I think just in general is that the difference between like a sort of hard sell and soft sell. The best way I could kind of give it an example is, you know, where we are now, right? East London. I had a shop in Box Park, Shoreditch. Prior to that, I had a market, right? And I ran them simultaneously at one point. So the selling, although the product was the same, how I was selling it was completely different in two stores. You know, in the market, it's very hustle and bustle, and you got to get people in. Would you like to try it? And give them the hard sell. You know, why would you like it? Have you tried it before? And so on. Whereas when I had a shop, that hard sell is actually a deterrent, right? Because they already sort of believe you because you have a shop. So it's that validation. It's now what are the key drivers to getting them to buy or what they want it for, right? And I think it's the same thing when it comes, especially now, to buyers. Whereas I don't really have to show. Well, of course, you always do, but I don't. It's not my main aim to show social proof now, or you know that. Of course, you always have to show you're compliant, but they almost assume that because of where I've been in terms of buyers. Now it's, you know, giving them the actual key deliverables that they want, like what's my strategy when it comes to customer acquisition and so on. So it has changed in both like what people see me as, but also in terms of like what we actually have to sell. So it's a constant pivot.
Yeah, I can imagine. Very, very cool. So tell me about CBD. Like, what made you get into that space? And you know, I think it's because you've really been in it for quite a while now, right? Quite ahead of its time when you first got involved in the space. Tell us a bit about the journey.
Yeah, so I got involved in CBD. I would say my journey began, say, like 2019 in terms of like taking it myself. I had quite a bad knee injury. I had like bad chronic pain issues and so on. I saw you had James Park on here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so rugby player, so on. I'm sure he could tell you about injury, but yeah. I essentially had quite a bad knee injury.
Well, can we compare? Because my knees are fucked. Well,
yeah.
What's your
so
knee
I've
injury?
got I have it just clicked there, but I've got osteoarthritis in my left knee.
Okay.
I damaged my articular meniscus, and I had like something like bone marrow edema or something, like a big bruising in the end of my femur. And it was just real harsh. Every time I was like lifting my leg, it was like carving the meniscus under my kneecap. And it was just horrible. And I went, yeah, it just changed a lot of the way I felt about things, not just physically, but mentally, because you're not sleeping, you're in pain constantly, right? What about yourself?
It's the worst, right?
Yeah.
Well, so I've got something called trochlear dysplasia. So you know the kneecap sits in a groove.
Yeah.
I don't have a groove, I have bumps. So my kneecaps don't sit in anything, so super prone to dislocation. So I've dislocated my knees probably like 10, 11 times across both knees. It's been brutal. Now it's just a case of like knowing what you can and can't do, right, and living within that framework. But it's once you do a knee, it's never the same, right?
No, it's just never the same. Like it's so weird because I had seen a couple specialists, and I went to a musculoskeletal specialist, and the doctor that was dealing with me had a colleague that was doing a trial on stem cells, and they put me on the list for it, right? So I was like waiting for this trial for around 2 years and a bit. Did everything to rush it, so on and so forth. They put me in a hospital for my finally surgery date came. COVID obviously got in the way of a lot of things, but the date came and I had MRIs, everything ready for it. I go into surgery when they're doing the arthroscopy to check the actual lesion that they want to, I guess, like inject the stem cells or something along the lines like that. The lesion wasn't big enough, so they just shaved my meniscus.
Wow.
And that's exactly what not only people from outside, like physios and stuff, told me, that's what you do not want. they just done it, and I woke up like.
What, they did it without consulting you? Isn't that like
it was part of it, like, you know, if it's too small, but it was like, yeah, it's not too small, like it's not gonna happen.
right?
And yeah, I woke up and they were obviously, I'm coming to and I'm a bit delirious and whatnot, and essentially the wrapping around my knee shouldn't have been what it was if I had the stem cell treatment, and because of course it's COVID, I had no one around me, so like I'm in this bed by myself.
You know,
God's
this
honest
is
truth,
something's gone wrong here.
Yeah, and they're like, by the way, the doctor came up to me after I've come to, and I just remember like waking up in this room, and they're saying to me, yeah, we had to shave the. Funny you said trochlear. It was like in my trochlear notch or something.
Right. Yeah.
The lesion was, or something along the lines like that. They just shaved it, and I just sat there. I was like, I just cried for like 3 hours. Like I couldn't deal with the idea that it's going to affect my physical well-being. But even all this time, just my whole thing was, okay, what can I do? I tried everything. Like I tried, you know, I was at one point I thought calcium helped, right? So I was crushing up eggshells and stuff and making it into a fine powder and put it into a tea. So like stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I got put onto CBD. Kind of being the consumer of CBD almost made me the founder. So seeing a lot of issues amongst, you know, the market, bad tasting products, very expensive, sometimes efficacy, the actual deliverance of what I wanted.
Right.
And, you know, there was just a lot of issues around it, and I felt that there needed to be like a more enjoyable way of taking CBD. We came out with like a little bit of a soft launch with a few different products and just went down the food sort of route.
Yeah, nice. Okay. And obviously as a consumer, you're like, great, I see the value in this. This has been really useful for you. Did you think at that point you're like, oof, like regulatorily, this could be a nightmare? Or like when did the realities of that start kicking in?
As bad as it sounds, like launching. But yeah, I mean, of course we went through all of the sort of things that we had to, but I've never been the type of person to sort of like sit down and, I mean, in hindsight, especially now, I think it's got to do with naivety and just, I can do this. Like, why not?
Which you need, right?
Yeah,
you need to back yourself
right?
to that level.
I feel if I was aware of all of the problems I was going to be facing, then would I have jumped in as easily? But that's part of it. I didn't really want to go into like sort of analysis paralysis. I wanted to just go in and find the issues when I find them and address them then. But yeah, like you said, we were somewhat lucky that we were in the early stages of the industry. But at the same time, there's a knack to also being, like you said, there's a lot of things that came with getting into the esports industry right before the sort of like golden era.
For sure.
But I'm sure you could have learned from a lot of mistakes, right? So I know I could have learned from Drops of Hill 1.0 and made a 2.0 version. So yeah, good and bad, like anything.
100%. And I think it's such an exciting space. Like would you consider Trip the leader in CBD? Or?
You know, it's so funny. Anyone who knows CBD knows Trip.
Yeah.
Trip's like 88% market shareholder.
Wow,
yeah,
88%. That's crazy. Right, for disruption, that.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that's kind of almost like yourself. It's proof. That's almost the idea of a lot of founders. It's like someone will look at that like, oh, they're monopolizing, and it's like someone else will look at that, say, yeah, there's waves to be made in this industry.
100%.
And that's a perfect example.
Yes, because consumers have zero choice right now. If I'm thinking CBD, I'm thinking Trip, which is great for them for now, but you know, it's the sort of thing which says it's a great proof point to investors in the space. It's a great proof point to anyone in the space that there is a big market here where you can make a big, you know, consumer dent, but ultimately consumers want choice.
Yeah, and you know, we have a product that's coming for Trip, but it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love what they do. Don't get me wrong. I think what they do is great. I think their share of the market. I think they launched not far off, either just before us or just after us.
Okay.
So, you know, what Olivia and her co-founder do there, I mean, they're great. Like what they do is amazing. But
we're coming for you.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. Love that. Okay, nice. And when you speak to investors in the space, when you speak to partners in the space, how often, if at all, are you coming up I don't like CBD because it's got that like tinge to it, or do people now get it?
Yeah, a bit of both, I think. You know, as anyone who's parting with capital, naturally they're going to look at any sort of bumps in the road, and you know, especially in an economy we're in now, it's a smart time to be smart with cash. But I think it also says a lot about the investor. So, you know, there are people who are going to be a bit more of a hands-off investor, or some people who are going to be. There's people in this space. I even saw one of your clips earlier that, you know, a lot of people look at the disparity in view of Bitcoin and AI and all of this, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just like the idea of what people think of this space. It's been around for 3 years now. It's every year, it's compounding. The idea that CBD is going to fade at some point, it's not. And this is the industry the industry it is now is without a lot of, I guess, studies that are really backing it as well. Mm-hmm. I won't get into like maybe why them things aren't coming out, but at some point it's going to keep tumble rolling. And especially if like we were saying about that adaptogenic space or anything within sort of the UK following the footsteps of the States, if you see the cannabis industry in the States, it's rocketing.
Yeah.
It's purely hockey stick. It's going up and going up. So yeah, there's no saying that CBD is going to go. It's just based on the investors' own. Sometimes they might have their own idea on what CBD is or sort of align with the taboos of CBD, but it's normalizing, right? It's kind of partly the idea we got into olive oil. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, if you're taking something and dropping it under your tongue, it's dark green. It's going to feed your narrative if you already have one. So having an olive oil, being able to put it just into food, and especially now with this new product that we're coming out with, which we're launching in about a month, it's almost a replacement for something that people love and they feel guilty about. So even further, so it's just another reason. But yeah, you're gonna face that. You're gonna face that in many industries, though, right? I think esports, I'm not sure, but did you meet anyone who was like, nah, this is not gonna take off? And
oh yeah, there's definitely, especially from. Well, I think there's so much vested interest in anything that we look at, right? And when you're in the sports world, then sports rights holders were terrified of esports because they see massive decline in the younger demographic going to sporting games, engaging with sports in the same way, because it's a highlight generation, right? And when you're looking at a 90-minute football game where the ball's out of play more than it's in play, you can understand why the younger generation, the ADHD generation, you know, would much rather watch esports where it's like, you know, action every single second, right? So there's always lots of vested interest, and I'm sure that's the same within CBD. But then I think ultimately, you know, let's look at like Juul for a second.
Yeah.
You know, ultimately there'll always be massive hesitation from those vested interests in saying this is bad for you, but ultimately they'll decide they just want to buy a piece. So with esports and Gfinity that acquired my last company, we ended up working with the biggest sports rights holders to create esports solutions for them. So ultimately, vested interest will fight it as long as they can.
Until they have to conform,
Until they have to conform, exactly. And I'm sure it'll be the same within CBD, cannabis, and psilocybin as well, especially when the economy is as fucked as it is right now.
Which is still happening. It's just behind closed doors right now that a lot of people aren't seeing. But yeah, it's a perfect example.
Yeah, 100%. And that's it, because they have to wake up to the reality. But I think that's why it's important to have as much focus on these things as possible and as many conversations, and why I'm so happy to see you guys, you know, win that competition as well, because I think it's, like you said at the start, it's important for everyone in the industry, and people who genuinely believe that what you guys are building and distributing, you know, can positively impact the lives of many, many people. Again, not making any health claims, but me believing that could be the case.
No, definitely. And I think especially when you're, like you said, this perfect analogy with the esports, and we're seeing it with, I think there's like a really famous one about Toys R Us and, you know, and the internet, and sort of rejecting the internet and rejecting like evolving. And I think that's when you really die. And I think especially now, I guess Gordon has every right back then to say, you know, well, I've got a brand. I've built this brand for years. It's quite a temperamental market in terms of what people think about it and publications. Will it ruin my image? But when you know, you can see that everything is lined up properly, and how the industry is performing, the idea and the mission that we're on, and sort of the innovation that we're taking throughout the industry as well, I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, 100%. And I think also Gordon's such a perfect person for that brand, because ultimately you've got someone who's always been unafraid to, you know, be on the edge from like a personal brand perspective.
I think, like, especially, for example, there's a lot of things that we have lined up that are very disruptive. And I think when you think about disruptive figures within the media space, he's probably up there, right? And I say up there, probably top. So it's just, what better way to have, you know, even sometimes people come up to me in the street and they're like, yeah, you're with the sweary chef. And it's like, yeah, well, we're the sweary CBD brand, you know? It's kind of like, it's a good way to be good person to be paired with, right? You know, it's when them personality traits of just the brand and our investor align makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. All right, cool. I've got 5 questions I ask every single guest.
Shoot.
Not quick fire or anything. My first one for you is, what's the single biggest risk you've ever taken, and what was the outcome?
Single biggest risk I've ever taken. You know, it's hard because I think pretty much everything I do is a massive risk. But I think this business, right? My first ever. A lot of people going into any type of business. By the way, you want me to just answer them how I feel to answer?
Yeah, of course,
Cool.
of course.
Yeah, I think the biggest
Whatever
risk,
it means to you, right?
Yeah, man. The biggest risk is this. I've never sort of done anything half-hearted. I don't really have a plan B for anything. Maybe, you know, when it comes to our own campaigns and so on and what we do strategy-wise, there is something behind. But again, putting all of my eggs into trying to be a rugby player, putting all my eggs into, you know, now this entrepreneurial space. I picked the craziest industry just to jump in 2 feet with, and I've always banked on myself. So I think just how I am, I'm very risk averted. Now, of course, I have to take things a bit different because, you know, life's changed a bit. But yeah, everything. But this business was a big one.
So tell us about that rugby journey. Did it end with this meniscus shaving? Was it?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, to be honest, it's not. You know, I didn't get to the heights that I wanted to. But again, as you've probably figured out from my mindset, I have no doubt that I would have done something anyway. But that's kind of always been my thing. It's just jump in 2 feet. So.
Yeah, okay. And I mean, that must have been a really difficult journey then, getting yourself back out of. Because I think it's interesting. Like, I see this with founders as well. When you have to give so much of your lifeblood to something to make it work, sacrifice so much to get there, and sacrifice at expense of, you know, building other areas of our lives, of our interest, of personality, because, you know, for anyone who doubts it, it takes that much to achieve anything, right? It's almost like when a business doesn't work out, or even if it does, once you sell it, it's almost like an identity death as well, because it's like this thing that you become so closely aligned with has come to an end.
Have you had that?
I did after I sold Real Sport, right?
Okay.
Because it was like, you know, this thing that from the age of 21 to 26 had sacrificed everything else for. You know, at 21 had loads of friends. By 26 I had 3 mates left because there was no, you know, and it was too much, right? Sacrificed too much, but it got us to the end goal. And then you have that like identity theft where it's like, fuck, like, what do I do now? Like, who am I? I remember when I after we sold it, it was like, am I going to become like a fireman? Like, am I going to work with guide dogs? Am I going to try to build another company? It was that level of like, who am I? Yeah. Like what do I do now? Was it similar with the end of rugby? And
it was like an ego death, really. It's not that my whole ego was, yeah, look at me, I'm doing this. It's more just like the idea and the image of self, really. It's like what I believed of myself or what I believed myself to be, and then you kind of see that crumble in front of you. And then in some cases, like the added things of like your body failing you and then how you feel and so on. But to be like really transparent, it's like, I think I win anyway. I think having something die in front of me and then really just brush myself off, not give a shit and just move on with it is kind of like my whole approach to life. I feel like my upbringing, my starting life, my family starting life, it's all the same. So I really couldn't care less. Like, one of the things I had a lot about was, you know, oh my God, like, you went on TV and, you know, just a lot of narrow-minded people in my ear and stuff, and I couldn't care less. I'm telling you, it does not affect me. Like, I don't care, because that my idea of like absolute failure is sitting on like a deathbed sometime and being like, fuck, I should have done this. And that's really how, like, I fear that more than anything. Like, I'm cool with and working any job at the end of my career if I've failed every single time, but I can guarantee I'm not going to. I'm just going to carry on knocking on the door until it caves in. Like, that's my mindset. And yeah, I feel people like that really put in and apply, they always win. Whether it's tangible things you can hold in your hand or like that person you create at the end of it. Like, I'm just so in love with that image of that person I want to be that I'm willing to just keep throwing everything at it.
100%. I love that mindset, because I think there's so much important stuff in there. One is when you know that you're good, no matter what happens, you can afford to take big bets, right? Because that's sometimes what I think about, and it's like, right, actually, if this goes wrong, do I end up in jail or dead? No. Okay, let's do it.
Literally,
do you know what I mean? As long as I stay out of jail and don't die, then I can go again, right?
Absolutely.
So if you've got that mentality, it allows you to have that big bet, which I think is important. But the other one is, and for every founder listening to this, is if you have the mindset that you won't be beat, then every obstacle that comes up is just like, okay, well, there is a way around. It's just about your determination to find that, right? So as long as you have that mindset which says, I will get from A to B, doesn't matter how big those hurdles are, if you've got that determination, you'll find a way through.
100%. It's a big risk, but there's no better feeling of like liberty or freedom that you can like. Whatever I fancy doing today, like of course with discipline, it's on me. Like I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
And if not, fuck it. Like I've done that. I've sat in markets screaming and shouting to people, and other business owners are looking at me like, what is this guy doing? And it's like, yeah, not to. And I mean this with all due respect, like sometimes you'll see the difference in where people end up, and everyone that I see really doing things, they all have like common denominators, and it's that sort of, even there is a fear of failure almost, which makes you kind of push harder, but I'm like you said, it's not life or death. I'm not going to end up in prison. I don't care.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in CBD, so I've got to be careful. But yeah, like I don't care to an extent.
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I mean?
100%, 100%. Okay.
Just caveat that one.
Yeah. All right. What are you proudest of?
Oh, what am I proudest of? I think one of the hard parts about being in this position is kind of like you often don't pat yourself on the back. But I would say like I'm proud of like more rather than the things that I can hold, I'd say like more just how resilient I am and the things I get on with. I'm proud to have like, I've got a really amazing family and backbone of people. So I'm probably like most proud of that. And yeah, I don't realize sometimes how nuts or crazy I can be until people like sit me down and like, the fact that you just throw yourself at these things, so sometimes like just proud of stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's so important. And you're right. I think when you also have that mentality of like, right, on to the next, you've got to take those moments to actually be like, yeah, cool, I'm proud of myself for doing this. I try to now do that every day. Just when I'm going to sleep at night, just being like, actually, do you know what? You fucking woke up at 5 a.m. and did what you needed to do.
On, yeah.
Just little things like that. And because it becomes, I think, the brain is amazing, right? So I genuinely think from like a neuroplasticity perspective, like actually rewiring the brain to have that like positive reinforcement of self, right? It just makes it easier, And I think it's so important. Same with gratitude for me, anyway, on that side of things. Like even just taking those moments to have that bit of pride, that bit of gratitude. I don't know. It just actually allows you to like, be like, yeah, cool. We're waking up at 5 a.m. Like it just seems to get easier.
We're really blessed, like especially to be in this position. I couldn't agree more. It's balanced. Like it's one of the biggest journeys, regardless of all of the like logistical side and the business side of it. There is just self-discovery in this. It's a huge part of it, right? And a lot of people say like a company stops at its co-founder and or its founder, let's say. But yeah, I'm learning more about being better to myself rather than better, like nicer to myself. I don't like that idea. I like the idea of like what you're saying, just that constant gratitude and reminding myself like I'm actually really blessed to be in this position. Many of people that walk the same journey as me, like in the early stages, let's say when we were young and stuff, have ended up in some really precarious, I do sit back sometimes and I'm like, wow, like this is crazy. But I try not to do that too much because I don't want to like brainwash myself like I'm finished, because I'm really not. I really feel like I'm barely starting. Like I feel people listen to me now, but it doesn't really mean nothing.
Yeah, I totally understand that, and it is a really interesting one with gratitude and desire for more, because I see that a lot, and I think it's sort of thing that, like I used to be maybe not concerned about, but thought about for sure, which is like that gap between like gratitude but still desire for so much more, right? And it's an interesting one, but I do think the two can go hand in hand, where it's like, because I without going too off a tangent here, but I genuinely believe like if you become a vessel to do like real good, then the universe will continue to like allow you to fulfill that. And I genuinely believe that, like, if you want to become a force for like helping others and positivity and all those things, I genuinely think that energy comes back to you in that way. So for me, I've found that to be a really, really, interesting part of the journey. But also, so many close calls. So many close calls looking back, like as you said, where it's like, fuck, do you know what? Actually, looking back at that, like, it's crazy I survived that, or it's crazy that I didn't get caught for that, or like whatever it might be. It's that's why I genuinely feel like the gratitude and the need to want to do something positive. It's like there's no way that I got lucky in that situation or missed out on that situation without there being something for me to do.
Yeah, 100%. Like, oh, you're going to pay the price for that later on. Like, either in your sense of not giving yourself gratitude, are you one day just going to drive yourself to completely, like, sort of round the edges, and are you just going to be weighed down like that? Because it happens to people, right? And someone said this to me, and it stuck with me. I was so set on, I still am, I'm so set on what I want to do in life and things I want to achieve, that, like you were saying about, you do, on this journey, you lose friends, you don't spend time doing certain things, you don't forget about your family, but, like, certain times, like, you believe what's going on in your head is the be all and end all. And I was getting my hair cut. He's a good friend of mine, Sam, and he said to me, you're building high walls, not long tables. And that just played with me. And it was in my head for so long. And just to, at some point we put so much into this journey that we're doing and to our mission, our companies and so on. But it's like, at the end of the day, there's why that same application needs to be put into yourself, right? That's why I really feel like, yes, this is an entrepreneurial journey, but it's almost more of a self-discovery journey than it is anything. You know what I mean?
100%.
That's why you see all these entrepreneurs, get up at 5 and ultra marathons and ice baths. It's you're putting into this company. If you can put into that company, you should be putting into you. So it's the same thing.
100%, because everything's a mirror, and that's what you're building, is a massive mirror, a mirror of people and customers, employees and investors, and literally, like, it's the biggest growth journey. It's the biggest growth. I from what I hear, like, having kids is that sort of level.
Yeah.
But if you do the two, I mean, that's some serious growth you're going to be forced into, or not. All right, my next one for you is there anything you wish you did differently?
I try not to think that I'd do anything differently. If I had the actual ability to, maybe, but no, when it's done, it's done.
Yeah, love that. Simple
Literally
as.
simple
All right,
as. Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Okay, what does it take to be successful?
To be successful, I think the blueprint might be a bit different to everyone, but I think amongst people who are successful, and I wouldn't put myself in that category, by the way. I think, again, I'm just starting in this, but I think you need a bit of naivety. You need to be slightly deluded to actually explore some of the things that you do. It requires discipline, 100%. You need to be really diligent and disciplined in what you're doing, especially if you're in a space that's going to beat you down most days. You need to be able to, like, be cool with that and go again. So, yeah, you need to be resilient, diligent, deluded. Yeah, you just need to be a bit of a wacky person. But yeah, I think there is space for people, and I think the idea that also network. There are people who are successful who may not be as personable, but understanding that there is a wisdom to not gatekeeping and to, like, keeping a community of people who share knowledge and help each other. Some of it can be very easy to be, like, disheartened in this journey, disheartened or so on, but there are people out there who's willing to help, right? When I first started this thing, I met Ollie Olsen, founder of Office Group, and I came to him with an A4 sheet of paper with honestly the stupidest business, right? I should actually talk about this one day, but, like, it's embarrassing.
What was it?
It was Drops of Hill, but we called it Balls of Hill.
Nice. Okay.
Right? And when I say, like, the idea was ridiculous.
Balls of Hill.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I just thought I was so funny with it.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's a pun. It's a pun. It's not a business, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like a joke, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, in hindsight, when I look at it, I'm like, fuck, I went into that meeting with him. He gave me a lot of time as well, and I reached out to him, just a random kid, like, fresh out of rugby, like, Ollie, I've got an idea. Gave me, like, 3 hours of his time, sat me down, we sat down and went through every aspect of it. The person I was after, I really believed that person couldn't speak to the person who went into that meeting.
Wow.
Honestly, like it was like a big eye opener. But there are tons of people like that, you know. I honestly wish someone who's really young getting into F&B one day wants to contact me, because I'll give them time to say, wait, Ollie gave me time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it's them sort of things, you know, the idea of networking, discipline, delusion, and so on. Yeah, resilience. You need them things.
I think that's such an important point, and a great message for anyone listening on the founder side about reaching out to successful people, because what I've found is successful people like appreciate how difficult the journey is, how much luck there is involved, exactly like you're saying, and therefore they want to help. What you can end up doing, and I'm sure it's the same within F&B, or tell me if not, but certainly the same in industries that I've been involved with, if you're spending your time with unsuccessful people, what you'll get exposed to is like hatred, jealousy, like all of those things. And then it's a shame, right? Because then it becomes a thing of like, oh, well, this person doesn't deserve this person doesn't deserve that. But actually, like, reach out to people who are where you want to be, and more often than not, or at least quite a good bit of time, people want to help.
Yeah, I don't think anyone who's done more in their journey than me has ever looked down on me for what I'm doing. And I think I've had loads of criticism in this, and I welcome it. Like, I like the criticism; it kind of adds to my fire. But just anyone doing better than you in life is always they understand the journey, both
100%.
For self-discovery or for entrepreneurship, or, you hear the typical stories about athletes who, they get in, you need a veteran in the team because they kind of hone these young players and help them. It's the exact same thing. Like, there's nothing better than it. And you have little, sort of like little sects and diasporas within, like you said, within business, and you have F&B and someone who maybe knows the ground a bit more. God, I'll do that all day long. I really think you're never too smart to learn. You're never too dumb to teach. And it's a perfect thing. I'll pick your brain at one point. I can guarantee you're probably going to get a message from me in the future if I ever get into something in your line of work.
Yeah, amazing.
Or just what's your idea on this? Give me your initial thoughts. So 100%.
Amazing. No, and I'll be reaching out to you as well on that.
Good, do.
I'll hold you to it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. My last one for you is 15-year-old Andy walks in the room right now. What are you going to tell him?
That's a good one. 15-year-old Andy. Don't stress. It'll be good. That's it. Literally.
So sometimes what you need to hear.
Yeah,
right?
Man.
Sometimes 100%. That's what you need. Like, everything's going to be all right.
Yeah. I felt like my journey started before 15. I think my journey started when I was like, as soon as I could remember, just watching mum hustle and do what she had to do to get us to the next point. But from then, I felt like I was this person then, just younger, right? Like, I was still in the idea of like, I've got a goal, I need to reach it. I've got a goal, I've got to reach it. So I feel I would have just told myself to be a bit nicer to myself and, take it in a bit more, enjoy the journey, stuff like that. But we're here now. Maybe I should use that same respect now, but it's cool, man. I'm super grateful, and I'm super grateful for you to have me on here. Like, even this type of thing blows my mind. If 15-year-old Andy saw me now and saying like, people are actually listening to what I say, it's crazy.
I love that. Well, you got a lot of great valuable advice for lots of people to listen to. So thank you for sharing that here. Andy, you're a legend. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Andy Albalous. Check us out at Drops of Hill. Head to the website. Give us a message, man. We're personable people. We like talking. So yeah, hit us up and we come out with a new product real soon. So yeah, it's gonna be cool.
Amazing. We'll link to it in the description as well.
100%.
Andy, you're a legend. Thank you so much, bro.
Bless you, brother. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching the episode. And if you haven't subscribed, please hit subscribe below so that you can support the podcast and we can keep on bringing you amazing new guests. If you want to see the other amazing episodes in this podcast, click into our series section. As ever, if there are any other guests or topics you want us to explore, just let me know in the comments and we'll do our best to bring someone in.